Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Public Works Finance and Safety Committee meeting of Monday, October 15, 2018. The first item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion and second for approval? Moved by Bueller. Second by Y. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. The second item is public input, and this is the time set aside for anyone to come up and talk about something not on the agenda. I don't see anybody here to do that, so we'll move on. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? Moved by Vilhauer, second by Danforth. Any discussion?
Yeah, this committee, are we one committee or are we going to operate as two separate ones?
One.
It's all one
Yep.
committee, okay.
Thank you for the question. We're all one big committee. Everybody votes on everything. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item 4 is authorization for the mayor to sign the amendment to the Prairie View Development Agreement. And I will look for a motion second for approval of this, which would be a recommendation to the full council. And then we'll discuss. Moved by Danforth. Is there a second? Second by Thorson. Okay, who wants to lead on this? Matt, are you willing?
I can lead off, Mayor.
Thank you.
So this is an addendum, pretty straightforward, one page to a development agreement that was entered into between the city and Midwest Business Condos, who were the developers of the Prairie View Addition. The agreement was signed in 2013. This agreement does three things basically. It came out of a meeting between city officials and the developers. One, this will amend the development agreement to reflect payments that were made to the developer that were not reflected in the original development agreement for the installation of storm sewer along 27th Street and 14th Avenue. This will also amend the development agreement to reflect the city's agreement to contribute 1/3 of the costs for the construction of this would be the drainage, drainage on Cherry Drive that had not been installed as was originally agreed to. And lastly, it would replace the previous exhibit that reflected the cost of the project with a new exhibit reflecting the updated costs.
Okay, thank you. And I see we have the engineer, Rod DeYoung from Austin Engineering is here. And I do have a question. The exhibit shows that the total for construction and engineering was $148,338.83. But we pointed out that we'd already paid $150 something. And now we have a new exhibit that shows that our actual amount that was spent was actually $153.
That is correct. Yeah, my name's Rod Young with Austin Engineering. I went through the invoices again, Sarah, all the way through, and this Exhibit B here will have to be replaced by the new exhibits that I give you there. And what that had, this one here showed some cost in there for my fees on this. But what I found was the original exhibit I had there had the wrong numbers in for the paving there on the first lift, 2-inch lift on 14th, excuse me. And what I was always struggling with before, there was a sheet that I had some numbers written on, and that was incorrect. City is paying half the share as well as the developer. So, and that's what it come out to, the correct amount there that you show on that sheet. It comes within a nickel, I believe it is, or something like that. So that I went through them sheets again today about 3 times.
So, but we paid on the other one. I I don't know, I guess they didn't match up.
Yeah, it didn't match up is what it boiled down. It was the first payment that you made of $125,661 or something like that, and it didn't match up. So, and this corrects that.
Okay. Mike? Sure.
So are the numbers that are reflected here net of what the city's already paid? So this would be our ongoing share? And then the second thing is Matt, you just said that it would be shared a third with the developer, a third with the city, and a third with the engineering firm, correct?
Correct. So,
But,
it's a
but
little-
let me ask my question, but this only reflects a 50-50 split. So I'm trying to understand,
That sheet that you're seeing right now is actually what's already been done. That's not the new one. The new one is Exhibit C, which is actually the cost that you'll see in Exhibit A. That's the third that we would split in thirds, or the city would pay for third. So this doesn't reflect that 38,000, or the 38,000 that you'll see in Exhibit C.
38 is the one that we discussed, that's a number that we discussed in our meetings with the developer, correct?
That is.
That we said we'd split a third, a third, a third?
Yes.
Okay. So from my standpoint, I'm not sure my use or relevance of this is, this actually is just to update
previous.
make it all correct and flow correct from a numbers standpoint. It's not on a going forward basis. The 38,000 something is the number that comes to my mind. That's the one that we're working with to finalize this, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure that our exhibits are all in order. The existing development agreement, which is recorded, refers to Exhibit B as costs. Is that correct?
No, the existing development agreement just had one exhibit, which
Just
was
Exhibit
Exhibit A. So now,
And that was costs.
correct, so now Exhibit A will now be the diagram or the plan drawing. Exhibit B is what you see in front of you, and that will replace the previous Exhibit A to the original development agreement.
But the revised development agreement or the addendum doesn't refer to Exhibit B.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does. Where? Oh, I see it.
The last
I
sentence
see it.
there.
Okay. So we have A, B, and C. And you guys have been through the numbers. Everything checks out and makes sense. From a staff perspective, do you support this?
Yes.
Okay. And the revised drawing has been approved by the city engineer, who isn't here tonight, but he did approve that, right?
Yes, he did.
Did he approve it in writing?
I sent over the approval in writing.
Okay. So
We
we have an
have-
acknowledgement.
We have that, and then I talked to the contractor today. The supplier has the materials built, and he's ready to go to work, so you'll probably expect it to start this week sometime.
Okay. Okay, this is a super complicated matter, and I want the council to feel like they understand what has transpired and why we're doing this. Does anyone have any questions about this? We've talked about it a couple of times, and we've had several meetings. So it's not the way we normally do business, but we're trying to clean up and be clear for the record and to update so that we don't look back and see recorded drawings that are different from what got installed. And Councilman Danforth?
Well, I just want to make a comment, having been a part of the discussions with the developer and ultimately part of the discussions that got us to the point where we're going to properly revise and reflect the development agreement and the associated dollars. I fully haven't went through the detail with the mayor and staff and the developer. Without question, I think there are some issues on all sides of this thing. It's been a long-standing issue that I think the resolve of the 38,000 and the sharing of that, I think was a very good compromise on Rod's standpoint, on the developer standpoint, and from the city standpoint. So I support what we've done, been through the detail, been through several meetings with it. And I think it's the right solution for us to move forward and to reflect the proper agreement as the end result of those meetings would indicate. So
I
do
agree,
support it.
thank you. And in the future, I hope that we can have a process that's more reliable, predictable, and understandable so that we don't get to this point again, because this was kind of painful. But I think everybody can, with a straight face, say that it's fair, and the council can agree to accept it. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion before?
Mayor,
Yes.
so the total cost to the city is
The additional
38.
cost will be 1/3 of the estimated amount, the final amount might be slightly different from the estimate.
but the
We're
rough
not paying
estimate,
we're paying 1/3 of that 38,742.
we're paying 1/3 of the 38,000. Okay.
And she did refer to that as an estimate once final costs are in, so we'd be agreeing to paying 1/3 of the total cost of the installed cost.
Right, so as it reads, the city shall reimburse the developer for 1/3 of the costs of the drainage to be installed on Cherry Drive, the estimated costs of which are reflected in the exhibit. So that's our estimate. We think it'll be close. And when it's done, we'll pay 1/3. And everybody understands, that's pretty clear, black and white. So if there are no more questions, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks for coming, Rod.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is consideration of change order number 2, final, for the miscellaneous storm and street improvements project number 1718 with J&J Earthworks Inc. for an increase of $400, bringing the total amount to $182,036 even. And I'll look for a motion second for recommendation. Got a motion by Wide, second by Danforth. Colin, would you explain this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was a project from last year, as you can see by the project number 1718. There was one outstanding item that had yet to be installed, and that was finally installed. So this reflects the $400 change order to that item, and we will final this project out once this is completed.
Okay, are there any questions? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Colin. Item 6 is consideration of change order number 5, final, for the sanitary sewer improvements project number 1808 with Dunick Inc. for an increase of $3,416, bringing the total contract amount to $523,625.41. Is there a motion and second for approval? Motion by Vilhauer, second by Bueller. And Colin, will you please explain this one to us?
Yes, thank you again. So this one has been an ongoing thing, as you can tell by the number of change orders to this project. This one, we went through multiple changes. With the base course, after taking off the top layer, or all the asphalt, not just the top layer, we ran into no base along these 3 streets. And so to make that right, we did allow for that through multiple change orders along the way. For that base course to be installed, and to kind of even out the money, we were going to do an overlay on 2 additional streets on 6th Street Southeast, and we determined that we could hold off a year or 2 on that to help save money on this one. So the ultimate price change here is only $3,000 instead of a considerable amount more, probably 10 times that.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, I'll look for action. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries. Item number 7 is old business, and I would like to discuss the water services for the 26th Street East assessment project, which is currently underway in Andrews Industrial Park. And I guess, Colin, would you like to give a summary, or can you bring up the map to show where it is?
Yes,
So we
just
can-
give me 1 second, please.
Okay. Essentially, this was the city's industrial park, and we completed all of the roads except for one stub on 26th Street, which led to one lot years ago. And there hasn't been a demand for that lot, and we were figuring there would be development between the two stubs of 26th Street to bring them together, because the land in between doesn't have an approved preliminary plan. We were pursuing that over 10 years ago, but the property owner was not really interested in finishing up a preliminary plan, so we just left it as it is. We've got a stub of 26th Street, and there became a demand for the remaining lot, and so that land was sold, and the land on the other side was sold. So one property owner owns most of the property abutting both sides of the street. And so they petitioned for a street improvement project, which we approved, and it included all of the utilities in a street as well as curb and gutter and asphalt pavement. And the issue came up with the water main. Our ordinance says that all of the services should be stubbed out in a new development before the paving goes down. But municipal utilities policy is that they don't stub water services out until there's a final plat or a building plan for it. And we aren't to the point, we have a proposed plat of, if you can show the lot on the west side of 26th Street right there, has a proposed plat breaking it into 3 lots. There's one existing service on 14th Avenue, and then one proposed service would be on 26th Street. And then the city-owned lot, which was the last one to sell, is, Colin, if you could show where that one is. That last lot got sold, and the owner intends to subdivide it into 2 lots and have 2 buildings on there. And so they were wanting to have 2 services to those 2 lots, and expect that with the new development with Terex going in almost across the street, this is very near to the Terex site, and there's been a lot of demand for land to be developed nearby. We expect that this will develop very quickly. But municipal utilities is reluctant to install the water services, because if it doesn't build out in the near future, and then the water services start to leak, they struggle to get that fixed. So I asked for municipal utilities to come and present their case. The city wants to have those services stubbed out because it preserves the integrity of our road. The purpose of our ordinance requirement that services go in before the road is paved is so that you have one continuous smooth street constructed, and you don't have slices out of it everywhere a service goes in. And so from the public standpoint, that's a road with integrity. It's built in layers. You put the base course down, and you put, it ends with the asphalt on the top. And once you cut into that, that's destroyed. And you have seams on 3 sides that you didn't have before. And so we don't like that. We don't think that's good for the health of the road in the long run. The cost of the service is very small in relation to the cost of repairing the asphalt. So the materials and labor involved in installing a service, I guess municipal utilities could tell you what that is, but better than I could. But the cost of repairing an asphalt cut is a lot more. Plus, then you have a street with no integrity. You've got a street with cuts in it, and the slices are where water gets into the roadway, which is what destroys the pavement, and pavement's expensive. So I think the right thing to do from the public welfare point is to install the services now, because we feel, well, the property owner requested it, and we think that should be honored, and it should be part of their process. But municipal utilities asked me to sign a letter guaranteeing that the city would pay all of the expenses related to abandoning those services in the future, if they're ever required to be abandoned, period, with no qualifying of if they're not used, if they are used, 5 years, 50 years, 100 years, no qualifiers whatsoever. I'm not comfortable doing that without council authorization. First of all, I don't think it's a good thing to sign. If the council wanted me to sign it, I probably would, but I certainly wouldn't without discussing it with the council. And I think, I think that municipal utilities should defend their unwillingness to have the services installed at this time, so that we can make a decision as a community of what's the best way to move forward. So we have Steve Lehner, he's the general manager for municipal utilities, and Jeff DeVille is the water superintendent. And thank you for coming on short notice. I appreciate it. And go ahead and
Sure.
explain your perspective.
Just a couple opening comments. I'm sorry I'm late and we missed the agenda, because the agenda posted online actually says 4:20. You bring up the PDF, it says 4 o'clock, but the agenda posted says 4:20. Your opening comments, Mayor Karen, were basically correct. There's a few issues with what you said. Is we don't install services. The services are requested by the owners, and
Right, but they can't be installed without your permission and authority of.
We tap the main, and we'll work with the contractors to tell them, what we require. We do require, as state statute states, that there's one service per lot. So in this case, what's platted right now is the yellow lines. It doesn't have anything to do with the red lines. So there's one lot. We've run into this situation many times in the past, and it's caused lots of issues. I'll give you some examples. Pheasant Ridge, we put 4-inch taps to every lot there. So we have a nice smooth road, and we don't have to cut into the road. Almost every building out there has requested a 6-inch service instead of a 4-inch service, so we've gone back and cut the roads on almost every property that's out there. So things get put in the wrong place, things get put in the wrong size, and then that comes back eventually, sometimes with the developer, sometimes the owner. Most of the times it's the owner. We just had a gentleman on our board meeting, the last board meeting we have. Residential lots are the same way. The developers put them in. They're one service per lot required, so we don't dig up the street again. 2 gentlemen build on one lot, and they split the middle lot. So they each buy a lot and a half, and there's a service on that lot. So it sits there until it leaks. And that was the case for this gentleman. His water service started leaking, and he happened to be on the wrong side of the lot line, and he had the extra service, so he had to pay to dig up the road and abandon the lot or use it. But they had to fix the leak because it's unmetered water. So 19th Street, if you recall, when 19th Street was put in, the city requested all these services be put in to each lot or to each segment along that line, so we didn't have to dig up 19th Street in the future. 25 years comes along and we redo 19th Street again, and we've got half a dozen unused taps that haven't been used for 25 years, 30 years. So we go back to all the landowners and ask them to abandon their taps.
But those weren't leaking, to your knowledge.
Those weren't leaking. They were abandoned lines that weren't being used, which causes us issues because we can't locate them. The contractor comes in, and our contractor on that project hit one of those services. They had to repair it. So those things that get stubbed out, we don't know where they're at, And they're a liability for leaking, they're a liability for contractors hitting them, so we don't like to have them there. When we know there's a major construction project going on, if we know they're there, we'll force landowners to abandon those. They came to city council and complained about it. That cost the utility $60,000 to end up repairing all those taps, and we did that. You know, we're kind of getting to a point where this is becoming more and more of an issue. The letter you have probably in front of you, I didn't see it, but from Mayor Thorson was one we asked on 8th Street Southeast. He came in and said, we need to have a tap at each one of these locations. There was nothing platted. There was a preliminary plan, but nothing platted. And so we put them in, but in our experience, they're always in the wrong spot. You're going to have to dig them up, or they're the wrong size, or they need two. So you're going to dig it up one way or another. So we asked for just some kind of letter of assurance that says if there's anything that happens, if it's in the wrong spot and we have to move it, that the city will take care of those costs since they requested the line. And that's the same thing we're asking for here. If you want one service into the lot on the east side, that's fine. According to the developer, I don't know that he knows what he wants to do. We've spoken to him, and he may put a road down there and put contractor shops. He may split it into two. He may do nothing. He indicated to us he didn't necessarily know that he wanted services. So I guess the shops or the buildings to the left are not an issue. There's a 1-inch going in on the southeast corner of that lot. There's already a line stubbed in. And on the west-hand side, southwest side, that's going to have to be dug up in the street to put a new service into that, again, because it was subdivided. So we're digging into that new road to put a service in. So I don't think you get away from digging into the street. And I guess it would be nice if everything was completely smooth and but look at Willow Creek Extension. You know, they dug in another 2 services in that road after it just been paved because they needed a service. So I mean, it's part of the deal. That's part of our business. So you know, I'll let kind of Jeff talk about some of the particulars of these particular instances, but in general. We'll put a stub into that lot, but if we're going to put multiple stubs in, we're going to want some kind of assurances that if they need to be moved in the future, that somebody will pay for them.
Well, and I think that the assurances need to come from the property owner, not from the general public. Because, I mean, the general public has no way to recoup their costs for repairing this, unlike, I mean...
It's generally the owner that requests the services, not the city. The city's requesting the services that it probably should be
well,
liable
it's
for the cost.
we're doing an assessment project, and the owners have requested it of the city. It's our project to do the street for them, and this is what they've requested of us, right?
Here,
Yes.
if I may. So the owners did not make a formal request. This has been a discussion on our end, and Steve hit it right on the head when he said that they didn't know exactly what they wanted. I do know they're the property owner. They own the east and west side. They want this road as nice as possible as well. So that's when we brought up the water services, what they needed. And the contractor working on it actually called and said, "Are we putting water services in here?" And this is what sparked the whole discussion. It's nothing that I guess the individual owners requested at that time, but when we brought it up, it made sense on their end. It made sense on our end to make the formal request from you guys, and that's where this has led to now. I wouldn't say the owners don't know what they need or want at this time because they're only going to build on one lot, and then their intention is to sell the other ones. And however that ends up, this is the preliminary plats for both sides. It's rough, as you can see. It's not going to be perfect on my end, but that's kind of where we're sitting today. I know they want to put a contractor shop in where their main business will be, and they talked with the utilities, and I think they determined a 1-inch would serve theirs just fine. And then they've requested 6-inch lines to the east, not knowing exactly what would go in there. And I guess Steve was right in saying, it's hard to determine what our needs are at that time.
There is a couple problems with putting larger pipe in when you're gonna have smaller pipe on the end or to neck it down from a 6-inch to a 2-inch. First of all, there's gonna be some stagnant water in there because you're not gonna get total flow in it all the time. It's gonna get hung up in that transition. So likelihood the quality of water for that individual is gonna be worse. Our second and probably bigger problem is that you can't quite get everything flushed through there from the initial construction. And we've had an instance already that a little rock the size of a dime has got into a pumper truck from the fire departments and destroyed it because of a little rock. And that's because you don't get everything all flushed out because you don't have the full flow on the pipe. It necks down and you don't have enough volume to go through to flush it. Well, that gets back into the system and then draws back into the pumper truck. So we had that issue here 2 or 3 years ago, I guess.
I still have the rock on my shelf.
So, I mean, there's problems with putting a larger pipe in that you don't, if you don't need a 6-inch. The guy on the north side of the west lot just needs a 1-inch, and that's typically what people request up there. Most of those other lots up there have 1-inch services to them. It's very rare that you have a 6-inch service except for a large building and with fire suppression and in a lot of cases 4-inch will handle it. But those are requested by the customer. That's not something we push off and say this is what you have to have.
Right. My concern is with the city taxpayer being obligated to fix this if it leaks in the future, where the city taxpayer has absolutely no say whatsoever in whether or not the 6-inch service is used, or if they tap another 2-inch next to it or a 4-inch or something like that. They don't get a say in it, and it's not their deal. It's the property owner's deal.
Right.
So it's either the property owner is the one that should be signing this.
My concern is the same with the rate base because they're at the same. They have to pay for it if we got to go back in and fix it or put a smaller one in, as the case for all the lots out at Pheasant Ridge so far. That just goes to rate base, so it's the same thing as the tax base. So.
Right. Councilman Roby?
This can't be unique to Watertown. What do other cities do with this?
Most other Class 1 cities, the developer puts all the main in. The water department doesn't put the main in, so they're responsible. The water department's pretty much out of it. In Watertown, we pay for the water main to be installed in the residential developments and the commercial developments, and it doesn't get assessed back to the property owners. Now, I don't know about one lot. I mean, it's a state law, one service per lot, and there's some stipulations about how many feet per frontage in the county and how many feet per frontage in the municipality. But we try to follow that. We don't, there are some lots that we have 2 services in. For instance, the mall, it's so large you can't just have one service. So they have a service and they have a line that loops them that has fire hydrants on it, and they have a service on the other side of the building. The ethanol plant's that way. The armory is that way. Some of your large, Walmart's that, yeah. Some of your larger facilities end up having to have two services just because of their size. Terex has 2 services coming, so same thing. They'll have a looped line with fire hydrants on them.
Okay, so first thing, that's a good deal for developers and property owners.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very good deal. I think most people understand that cost is covered versus other cities. They have to absorb that cost.
That's huge in Watertown.
What's the compromise here? I mean, Sarah makes a good point, is what recourse do people have? Do you guys have any recommendations on a way to work this through?
You know, I'm just looking for some assurances that down the road, when that's the wrong size or in the wrong place and it needs to be moved, that
For us,
we're not going to bore the cost. So
it's pretty standard that when the water main is installed, services are stubbed out to the property line for every lot in a subdivision. And then the water main's given to the city. Some cities own everything in the right-of-way, and other cities like ours only own the main, and the adjacent property owner owns the service. So in no case does the taxpayer own it. I just don't see why we get sucked into it as the general fund or, even our taxes this isn't appropriate. This should either be the individual private property owner or the enterprise that is running the water, because the enterprise has the ability to, say you're going to use a 6-inch or you're going to have a new stub or you can have one today or you can't have one today. You control that, and you can raise your rates if you have to. We have no control over that. This is not our deal here. This is not our issue. We are building this road as a service to the adjacent property owners because they petitioned to have it built, and they want it built so they can develop. And everyone believes that they will develop in the near future. Now, that may not come true, but if you are making the tap yourself and you're inspecting the installation of the service to the property line and then it leaks in 5 or 10 years, is that the taxpayer's fault? That tap should last for many, many decades. It shouldn't be leaking after 25 years.
I would agree with you. It should be the property owner's responsibility. It should be their request for the service, though, as well.
And I thought
So-
it was their request, and I think they want it, but they don't know what to do or something.
I visited with one of the developers Thursday or Friday last week. I don't remember which day it was, and they had a pretty clear-cut plan what they wanted on the west side of the street, but on the east side, he said, we just don't know what we're going to do there yet. So,
Well, I would advise them that this is the time to install the services, that if they don't develop that lot, someone will, with at least one service, at least one building, and it'll probably be a big honking building. Those are huge lots. And with Terex going in, a 10-acre building across the street, there's going to be a demand for new structures all over, anywhere close to Terex. And we want to facilitate that. Will it take 5 years? Maybe. Will it take 10? Maybe. Probably not that long. But if your water service is leaking within that period of time, I that's a different problem.
Sarah, I don't think we're here talking about a bunch of water leaking services around town. It's abandoned water lines. That's
Well,
the
I don't think
issue.
you should be abandoning a service to undeveloped land ever if it's not leaking.
in most cases where they get abandoned, it's in a part that's already developed.
Okay,
and wasn't used. So if there would be two services stubbed into the single lot that's there right now and it stays as a single lot, there's an extra tap in there that will probably never ever be used, and it's a developed lot.
If your scenario was a great big large customer is going to go in there, they'll use one of those taps, and the other one will be unused.
Okay, then maybe it's just one tap, but I don't think that the city, regardless of how many go in, I don't think the taxpayers should be obligated to pay the cost of ripping up the asphalt and patching the main and abandoning a service sometime blank check down the road where.
I don't disagree with you, and all you need to do is have the property owner request a service from us, so we'll put it in. We won't put it in. We'll tap it when they put it in. We don't put services in.
But I
Contractors do.
also don't want to tear open our road, our brand-new road.
Well, can I just ask a couple of questions, Mayor, if I can? Technically, if I understand this correctly, the developer, the landowner, is really asking us to do this in some fashion.
I guess you could say
With the
maybe
acquisition
in
of the
some-
land and wanting of the road, they
some
are, but they're
fashion.
wanting us to assess it back versus pay it up front. Correct?
Right.
Okay. To me, that's a formality, and I agree with Steve. I think that, and I agree with you, Mayor, that this needs to be on the landowner's shoulders, not ours.
Right.
And whether we're the ones actually requesting it because it's an assessment project, but we're doing it on behalf of a landowner or landowners, ultimately that needs to leapfrog to them as far as responsibility is concerned. Steve, what's it cost to abandon a line? If we had if we had 3 lots and we run 1-inch lines to each one today, about what does it cost? Are we talking $1,000, $10,000?
If you go into the street and dig up asphalt and have to re-asphalt, it's probably $7,000 to $10,000.
And how do you determine if those things are leaking? Do you have just a water loss that you guys then try to figure out where it is, or how do you know?
Water comes up through the street or into the property
That's
owners, and it
typically
gets
the way, though.
reported.
It's just like,
Usually comes up. Now, it's not all cases, as Watertown's really sandy, so there's a lot of places where we found leaking water lines that are just leaking into the aquifer. So we just stumble upon those, but.
Mayor, can I ask a question? It really isn't about, somewhat about this, but my understanding was that when somebody buys a lot like this, that they can't subdivide it and sell it off. I always thought that they can't sell the property that we have for developmental purposes. We just had that conversation a few meetings ago. It's probably been 4, 5, 6 meetings ago, but I can't buy that lot just for speculative reasons and then go sell it, can I, when it's a city industrial park purpose?
That question came up on an undeveloped portion, which wasn't in any subdivision. It wasn't a platted lot. And they were going to plat it and subdivide it and develop it after buying it from the city, and we said no. That was in a different location. And in some of these, we may have had that stipulation. I don't think that exists, because this lot has been platted since, I don't know, do you guys remember? It's at least 10 or 15 years. Might even be 20.
I don't know if this, maybe Matt would know, but is this part of that conveyance from the Watertown Development Company back to the city? There's stipulations there, and maybe one of those that I know there's been folks that have tried to purchase land from the WDC that have tried to speculate and sell
Right.
off, and we don't allow that, so.
Yeah, I'd have to,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I think that's a dangerous precedence to have for people to be able to buy city industrial land, development land, intended to have buildings and businesses placed on them for the purpose of subdividing and selling. I think that's a very bad precedence for us to allow. Now, I understood that, and I could be all wrong, and maybe it's situational, but I understood that we had the first right of refusal on the sale of a property or a sub-sale, that it came back to us as a first right of refusal on that versus somebody just buying that, subdividing it, and then holding somebody hostage for a higher price, so to speak, and running the land development price up.
a lot of times.
I don't think that's.
A lot of times there is. I don't know if it's in his contract or not. I'd have to look. I don't know if it's in.
sell.
I don't know if it was in this purchase agreement or not. But a lot of times there is that first right of refusal put into the WDC land transactions.
Right. And I think there was on the west side, that was purchased by somebody many years ago, and they never developed it. Now this is a new owner that purchased it.
They buy that from the original landowner, or did they buy that from the city or the development company?
They bought it from the first person that bought the land.
But the original buyer was buying it from the development company?
Yes.
Okay.
We heard that
I am
stipulation.
very surprised that, based on my recollection, and based what I think is right, it's a whole separate issue from this whole water main thing, but it does come into play here, is I'm very concerned if we have city-owned or development-owned properties that are being bought and then resold for the purpose,
Right.
subdivided and resold, period. I don't care what the
Right.
circumstances are. I think that's a very dangerous precedence to set.
Well, I agree. And this may have some stipulations. I don't know, actually. It's a good point. We should check on that. I'm not asking for action tonight for any particular thing, just that that the project is waiting for a decision on these. I've been asked to sign a letter, and I took one look at it and said, no way, that's not a good letter for me to obligate the taxpayers for an indefinite time in the future over something that we have no control on. And this is a different issue, but it's a really good point that you're making.
If,
Mike, we heard there was a similar thing on the east lot there, but that's hearsay on our part, so we
Right.
wouldn't have any way to know that.
but if the developer doesn't know what they want to do with those properties now, is this really about trying to get the road done in advance of what they ever decide they want to do?
I thought they were developing the last, until today. My understanding was the developer owned, first that lot on the east side. They were going to build 2 buildings, which you can do in an industrial park. You can build 2 buildings on one lot, and you don't have to plat it. You can have any number of that type of buildings on an industrial lot as long as they all conform to our building requirements. And then the other lot came up for sale, and they were looking at buying that too for development. And the subdivision part of it, we should look into that more. If we've led someone to believe they can do that and they really can't, that should be in our contract, the purchase agreement, when the land was sold. And the purchase agreement with the original buyer on the east side probably gave Watertown Development Company first right of refusal, and maybe it was refused. I don't know, but
I don't think they're for sure that they are selling it at this time. I just think they don't know what they're doing with it quite yet.
That's what I understand.
Yeah, so.
It seems really premature to me to even physically put a paved road in there at this point when they don't even know what they want to do with the property.
Well, they're doing
And-
something on the west side though,
Well,
and it was an assessment project.
I do think the plan changed. They did not originally own this west. They purchased the west portion after they had the east portion.
that's right. We had a waiver of right to protest on the west.
Correct. And
That's right.
so when they bought the west, I think the plans changed, and now we're to this point. And to get back to the water services, is they're not requesting the water services. They may not even want them. I guess it was just kind of brought up, and I know Heath kind of spearheaded the decision, or not the decision, this discussion on I don't want the road torn up after it's brand new.
It's contrary to our ordinance to do
And
that.
that's why I think the 6-inch got brought up. And it's not
Yeah.
even, they may not need 6 inches.
Yeah, okay.
The only time 6 inches is needed is a fire suppression. And you guys hit on that too. But since they don't know, that's why we were saying 6-inch to the property line.
That should be an obligation with that landowner, not with the public. Yes, Councilman Roby.
So who's requesting the road to put in?
The landowners.
Then I think then we can do that. We can, in the typical fashions, we'll stub it out based upon current information. If they change the plan, shouldn't they be responsible for that? Is it that simple?
We don't want the road torn into. They don't know what they're doing yet on the lot. They're not specifically requesting anything, but we want something in there before the road gets put down, so the road doesn't have to get torn up on the off chance it's what they want, is what I'm getting. But I'm guessing, though, the developers would end up having to pay more down the road once they know what they want to cut into the road, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And so it
Oh,
seems,
absolutely.
right, so it seems to be it'd be in their best interest to also
Yes.
guess at least what they want right now, and then agree to pay for any changes that have to be made.
Okay, so the decision this body has to make, I can't do all the details, I don't wanna do all the details. The decision we have to make, and we're not gonna vote on this is gonna go in the council meeting, correct?
No, it's not.
Okay, who's gonna pay for it? Okay, I think it goes back to the landowner. Is that the decision we have to make, or the recommendation that we need to make?
Right. Should I sign a letter that obligates the city taxpayers to pick up the tab if this is ever abandoned in the future? That's what brought this forward, is I didn't want to sign
What
that.
I've been told, no, it should go to the landowner.
I'd like to add a comment to that, though. We have it just seems really premature. I don't care if they're requesting an assessed road be put in or not. It seems extremely premature to put the road in without understanding if it's gonna be one lot or two or three, if where the site plans have for access, because if it's gonna be one lot, then, and their entrance is more to the south, well, then let's only run the road as far as it needs to go, put the water on the north side of it, so to speak, that it runs into the properties, and you don't pave over it. It's a road to nowhere, so to speak. It just seems like we don't have enough detail to even warrant putting that road in, or even, the concerns that Steve has are very, very legitimate, but
Okay, but
ours is the same way. It's like we build these roads and then we're tearing into them all the time. Well, then let's not put it in until we know what the heck's going on.
well, I think the landowner thought they did. They bought the east side, and the west side had signed a waiver of right to protest that they would pay their pro rata share of that road when the east side put their side part of the road in. And so did that gap, the little Walmart detention pond that's owned by Walmart, and that's their detention pond for the Walmart facility. They also are paying their pro rata share because the road's going in. So the property owner that started the whole ball rolling changed their mind midstream and ended up buying the west side.
Right, and what I'm saying is bring the detail on and we can make decisions once they know what they're gonna do, because even though we're gonna initially pay for the road, right? But then we're gonna assess it back.
Right.
But the whole notion of, Don, I agree with what you said, but the other part of that is, we don't wanna be tearing into our roads, so why
No,
put the road in?
We
unless-
don't. Right, and I guess I think they fully intended to build on that lot. And I think they fully intended to put two buildings on that lot, on the east. They bought that land from the city, and that was their plan. And to get a building permit, they need a road. So they said, okay, sign me up. And they're paying their share, Walmart's paying their share, and the other side of the street signed an agreement that said when the road goes in for the east side, you're paving the west side at your cost. So it's all the city's putting it in, and it's being assessed back to those three properties.
There are no known actual plans, Colin, is that correct? And there are no building permits pulled on any of those lots, east or west?
They cannot pull a building permit at this time.
Okay.
Well-
And they don't know what they're gonna do with them as
Right.
we sit here.
Maybe we don't pave.
They have given.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
They've given preliminary plats and a preliminary building plan for this west portion now, and preliminary plats for both lots, but nothing is finalized yet.
Colin, don't our roads historically have to go through a freeze thaw cycle before they're
Yes.
paved?
Yes, they do.
Was that the intent with this one?
Yeah, that's a good point too with how did that happen? That,
I'm not sure. I cannot answer that.
yeah, okay. The assessment didn't mess with that, did it? Having to get it on the tax rolls in a certain period of time? Kirsten? I mean, the city just carries the debt until next year, then, if we don't pave it.
Right, if we don't do that, the assessment would.
That's probably that's the answer right there. And we don't ever pave it until,
To Councilman Danforth's suggestion to pave the road up and bring a line into the north, that line's stubbed all the way to the trees, so that's possible. However, if they build something on the south side, they'd have to bring it from there over to the ditch all the way down, increasing costs for the customer or the owner. So they'd probably request to have it dug up in the street anyway, but.
Well, I think we have to weigh out,
I don't
in my opinion,
disagree with your thought.
is
but-
that
can't be.
there's what they want and you got their costs, but then there's also the long-term repercussions of doing what they want to accomplish by not being able to make decisions
Right,
as to where they want things.
right. No, those are good points. Kristen, what were you trying to?
She was just pointing out that we have a contract with the contractor to pave the road.
Project's been approved.
And it's going through the assessment process as we speak, and it's on the agenda in 30 minutes.
We're not ready for that.
Yes, Councilman Roby.
You know, when we get into these detailed discussions, I think we're getting down too far. All right, I don't know how to build a road. I don't understand how to build a water main. I get the repercussions of those decisions. What I would like to see is a recommendation to vote on. That's what I would like to see. Because we can sit here and debate this while we all get educated on the process, and that's going to take time, and I don't know how effective that is. So my point is, I think I need staff to tell me what they believe is the right recommendation, then I have to make a vote on that.
Yeah, and this has mushroomed into a lot more than I was expecting. I just didn't want the taxpayers to be burdened with an unending obligation standing out there for 100 years.
Mayor, they wouldn't, as long as they just request the service and where it goes. Because then they would be responsible if it needs to be moved and the cost to do so. So you can disregard the letter and the assurances.
Can I disregard that other letter that was signed by a previous mayor?
Probably not.
I don't think it's good
I don't know. We'd have
practice
to
do
ask the
that.
attorney that.
I don't think so. I mean, you may say, we're not going to hold you to that letter, but I'm not going to sign it because you may change your mind. If I've signed my signature with no dates where that obligation ends, no conditions whatsoever, just if this is ever abandoned, the taxpayer picks up the tab, I'm not good with that.
Well, I guess the question is why is it abandoned? If it's abandoned because it's in the wrong spot because it wasn't platted, then that's a different story than if it has to be abandoned for some other reason. But that's the old agreement, and we won't probably ever have to cross that path because they're all in the exact right spot and they're all at the exact right tap size, so we're okay there.
Right. Councilman Danforth.
Steve, I remember a number of years ago, and I can't remember if I was on the council or if I was on the municipal board at the time, but if I buy that property, let's say somebody puts in and you put all the stubs in, whatever those are, and I buy that property, and how do I know, do those stubs become a part of the property title so that I know that when I buy it, there's 3 stubs there? And the reason why I bring that up is we had, and I'm trying to think of where it was off of 212 somewhere, where there were some old stubs that we tried to clean up, we had problems with, and so we go back to the landowners and saying they had to take care of that. You recall that?
Yep.
And they're going, well, I didn't know these things were here. How can I pay for this? Why should I be responsible? How do we manage that under any one of these circumstances for the property owner to know there's a potential liability there?
That's a great question, and really it comes back down to the development and the developer. If you go to a residential development, they put one, and again, they put the stubs in, we do not. We put the main in. We pay, it's usually the same contractor, but we pay for the main to be put in, and the developer pays for the stubs to be put in, just like the developer pays for the roads and everything, and then assesses it back to lot charges. But they put one in for every stub. At that point, that it should get recorded with the land, or somehow, or the developer should be responsible to let whoever's purchasing the land know that there's a stub on their property, a water stub on their property. But really, when the developer sold that third lot that the gentleman came to our utility board and complained about, when the developer sold that extra lot and split it into 2, the developer should have said, there's an extra service here that somebody will be responsible for depending upon what side of the lot line it ends up on.
Right, but the problem of it is these things could be years and years or decades later, and, the
Exactly.
developers, in the cemetery.
Exactly.
Well, and that's why it runs with the land, but the problem that we had in the past of not knowing where the services are is not a problem today. That's no longer a problem because we have locating ability. We do as-builts. You can put tape down with your plastic services so you can find those. And when in the future you won't run into them because you've done a survey and you know where the services are. And that's on us to adhere to our rules that we should follow through and get accurate as-built from the developer of the land before we accept it. And we don't have that for much of our town. And we didn't have the technology, nor we'd have the rules back in the day. But we do today. So for new subdivisions, that's not the issue. But buying 2 lots and building on just one of them, and then 75 years later, having a service that leaks, having to be repaired, that's a different deal. And I don't think that we should be tearing up roads and abandoning main services that aren't leaking. I don't like that practice.
I don't disagree with that, and we don't go around doing that, Sarah. We normally make them be abandoned when they are leaking.
Yeah.
Because at that point, it's the Watertown Department's water that's going into the ground unmetered.
Councilman Vilhauer?
Mayor, I want to follow up, as long as you gentlemen are here, and I want to follow up on a comment that you made on your weekly KXLG show, because I've also gotten involved. I know there's been a number of breaks around town, around the lake, and your comment, and I think you guys probably allude to that too, is when that was annexed in, do we have substandard piping around the lake that we're going to start to see more and more problems for homeowners around the lake? And I had suggested that you alert the public again about the possibility or the option of buying insurance for that sort of a problem. I don't want to put you guys in the spot, but I know, Mayor, you made a comment to that effect as well last Wednesday. I guess, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I will. I actually talked to my insurance provider to see if I had a rider for a service line. And long story short, I had a hail check and they jacked my rate, so I'm going to go to a different provider. And I want one that has a service line rider on it. And she said that there are a handful of companies out there that are starting to go to that. 5 years ago, there were none. AARP offers that service. HomeServe, the one that came in, they came in and pitched that they market that to our consumers. However, they wanted a blank list from the utilities that showed everybody and their address, and they wanted to mass market to the entire community, where it's only a problem with the lake and plastic services. To answer your first question, and the main out there is sound. The services that are plastic are going to fail. So that's an issue. If you don't have a copper service or have had a copper service installed at some time, it's going to fail. And I don't know how long those services have been out there, but some of them have been out there a long time, so I don't know if you'd say that's useful life or not. So say that.
Mid
40
70s.
years. That's
So a lot of them have been there for 40 years. So I don't know that is an unsuccessful pipe or a premature failure. But we're seeing a lot of them. Most of them or all of them are on plastic lines out there. So
what you're saying is that we are going to see that happen around the lake fairly regularly. I mean, didn't we just have to tear up South Lake Drive just a few days after that got redone because of a break out there?
more than likely. And I would encourage the public to contact their insurance company and see if there are riders for that, because they're usually only $5-7 a month, and it's going to defer a cost of $7,000 to $10,000 if it happens. So.
I know you guys did this a couple of years ago, utilities as a stuffer with your bill. I guess I'd suggest that word get out there again to the public, again, maybe by way of a bill stuffer, to let the public know, one, what their obligations are, and two, that there might be insurance coverage, or they should look into insurance coverage for something like that.
We have press here that might be able to put that in an article in the paper tomorrow.
yeah. Okay.
I don't disagree with you, Glenn. We got to be careful that we don't endorse one certain company over others. So.
Okay, well, and as far as 26 goes, I think we need to do some homework on this tomorrow. We're not ready for the, what's going on right now.
Sorry,
And-
I didn't bring that up earlier.
No, that's, whatever. Things have fallen through the cracks, and we'll fix it. But thank you for coming. Does anybody have any more questions for municipal utilities or comments about this project?
That aren't related to your rates.
All right, then.
Thank you.
Is there any other old business to talk about? Any new business? As far as I know, there's no reason to go into executive session, so I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Wise, second by Roby. All those in favor? Those opposed? We are adjourned, so we will reconvene at 5:30 for the city council meeting.